Hey folks, Dr. Josh Luke here. I am a no-limitspreneur, and it was such a cool discussion to talk to Maher about all the different things that you can do as a no-limitspreneur to spend less on healthcare. They're free tips. We talk about my journey from sports marketing to hospital CEO to leaving the C-suite to say enough is enough, pull the curtain back, start a not-for-profit foundation to teach people, Americans, how to save money and spend less on healthcare. There's so many options. They're free tips. Listen to the show to find out how.
You're now locked onto another episode of the Nolimitspreneur Podcast, the show that helps you dominate in life and in business to enhance your mindset, confidence, productivity, time management, habits, and goals. And now, your host, Maher Abiad.
Hey, what is up, Success Nation? Welcome back to another value-packed episode of the Nolimitspreneur Podcast. Today is going to be a great day. I have the pleasure of speaking to Dr. Josh Luke, who is a veteran hospital CEO, a Forbes book featured author, a leading international speaker, and a faculty member at the University of Southern California. Dr. Luke's on a mission to use his years of knowledge and experience to help others break free from the entrapment of the current healthcare delivery model. Today, we're going to be discussing what Dr. Luke sees as issues in the healthcare system, how people can save on their healthcare, along with how we can be more proactive with our health instead of being reactive. This is an episode you don't want to miss, so let's jump into the interview right now. Dr. Josh Luke, welcome to the Nolimitspreneur Podcast. Really looking forward to speaking with you today about your story, your experiences, and of course, the very important topic of health. So thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
So there's a lot going on right now. You've definitely done a lot in your career, worked in the healthcare industry and space, hospital CEO. I really want to learn more about sort of where you came from to how you got here today. I want you to share your story and how you actually became an advocate for lower healthcare costs.
Yeah, so it's an interesting story. It actually goes all the way back to high school. I remember sitting on the bench in my high school, my senior year in my high school basketball game, and thinking to myself as I watched my teammates run up and down the floor that, hey, I have two older brothers that are professional athletes. Maybe, just maybe, God didn't bless me the same way, so maybe I should set a goal, have a backup plan from being a professional athlete for college. And I set my goals on sports marketing, stay close to it, right? Because I love sports like my brothers did. And I did that for a few years after graduate school with great success. I worked for Major League Baseball. I worked for the NFL Players Association. I worked for an NHL team. I did some work for the PGA. So, I mean, I was doing all that. I was having a great time. But it was actually in 1998, I was representing one of the most famous baseball players in the world at the time, Mark McGwire, when he broke the home run record. And I was flying on a private jet, believe it or not. I'd never been on a private jet since then. But I was with my wife and him, and we're on our way back from New York, taking him on the David Letterman show. And I looked at her and I said, hey, this has been amazing, but like, I think I want to do something different with my life. I'm not sure what it is. I was so into sports marketing. And now that I've kind of reached this pinnacle and represented all these organizations and these famous people, I was feeling like I needed more of a social mission for my career. And so I just asked her right there on that private jet, I just asked for her support and blessing and prayers and maybe finding what that next step would be. And within a few months, I had an opportunity to come up to join a nursing home organization. And I really felt like God laid that at my feet because my grandmother had been going back and forth between a nursing home and assisted living. And I had really been frustrated with the lack of communication between her caregivers and also the cost associated with receiving that basic care because she'd worked her whole life. So my journey in healthcare actually started in the nursing homes where I took that job. I started getting training. Within about 3 years, I was hired by somebody to be the CEO of this really small hospital in Southern California that had a nursing home and a behavioral health unit for seniors, which I had become an expert in those two areas. So my first hospital CEO job was actually without ever having worked a day in a hospital because that particular hospital needed a senior expert to make it successful. And we were able to do that over the next few years. So that's how my healthcare journey started.
That's an amazing story. It's always great to hear people's stories and experiences of how they came from, where they were to where they are now, because there's so much in life that you just pivot. All of a sudden, like you said, you're doing marketing, and then all of a sudden you get into the healthcare space. Kind of like myself, I was in the marketing arena for a number of years, and then I had my sort of calling land, in my lap. And I said, you know what? My mission in life is to help people with personal development. So I really appreciate you sharing that story. One of your books that you just came out with a number of years back called Health Wealth for You. It's called 11 Steps to Save Big and Live Healthy. What are some ways, I know you're a big proponent on the healthcare system and saving money, not just for individuals, but for businesses as well.
Yeah,
Can you
let me
share?
lay that groundwork really quickly before we
Yeah.
get to the actual tactics so people can go, wait, why is he an expert in this? So, what happened after I got to the hospital as a CEO is I did that for about 10 years. And then I ended up losing my job a couple of times during layoffs. That always happens to hospital CEOs, particularly in California. You're 2 or 3 years, you move on to the next one. And then I ended up being the CEO of an acute rehab hospital, which is back on the outside in what we call post-acute care after the hospital, and really saw that even though the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare as most know it, had come and gone, there still was not a focus on the patient or post-acute care. It was all about the hospital and making money. And so, it was my grandmother that brought me to healthcare. But right about that time, my mother at the time, bless her heart, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in 2010. And as her journey before she passed away in 2019, in her battle with Alzheimer's, is that long journey is what made me go, hey, my grandmother brought me to healthcare, and now here I am, 15 years later or whatever, 20 years later, and nothing's changed, and my mom's going through the same broken system. So I actually left the hospital C-suite and started a not-for-profit where I could train healthcare executives on how to do patient-centered care, patient-focused care, what Obamacare referred to as value-based care. My expertise became readmission prevention from hospitals. I wrote a book on that. It became the bestseller for the hospital trade. But I got so much attention from that book and being their bestseller for the American College of Healthcare Executives that year, which was 2015, I believe, that I wrote another book. And the name of the book was Execute, a former hospital CEO tells all on what's wrong with American healthcare. And that really was a guide. First of all, it talked about a broken system and why it doesn't work and why it's so expensive for everyone involved. It also had a guide for seniors who were adults like myself who were caring for their senior parents who were entering their golden years and needed help through those assisted living and nursing home decisions and questions. And that became a bestseller on Amazon. And that got the attention of Forbes, whose Forbes Books division called me and said, hey, will you write a book about healthcare affordability, because we've seen how you've grown on social media, on LinkedIn and Twitter and on YouTube. You can find me at Dr. Josh Luke on each of those mediums, but they saw that growth and they said, hey, people listen to you and you're not a broker and you're kind of in your face. You tell it how it is. You're kind of this hospital CEO that's pulling back the curtain on the industry, telling the truth. And we think that you'd be a good guy to write this book. And so I wrote my first book on affordability, which is called Health Wealth. Is healthcare bankrupting your business? And that also became an Amazon bestseller on launch day. So that was followed up, Maher, by a book called Health Wealth for You, because so many of my friends said, hey, the book you wrote was more for businesses on how to save money. Write one for us on how we as a family or an individual can save money. That book is on Amazon, also became a bestseller on launch day. It's called Health Wealth for You, 11 Steps to Save Big and Live Healthy. So that's how I went from being kind of a champion for patient-centered care and an expert on how to teach healthcare executives to a champion for affordability for you, your family, and your business in the United States.
And you've definitely mentioned a lot of issues with the current healthcare system and whatnot. And you're trying to help out. One thing you've spoken about in your talks, and you've given an example of a similarity between car shopping and buying a car at one price and an exact same car on the other side of the lot or on this other side of the street at a different price. And you use the term engaged healthcare consumer, or becoming an EHC. Talk about what an engaged healthcare consumer is, and more about sort of what these problems that you've seen that you're really trying to solve with all your books and your content that you're trying to promote right now.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. As Americans, I'm a Gen Xer, and as boomers, Gen Xers, and even some of the older millennials, we were kind of brainwashed, by the way, strategically brainwashed by big pharma and insurers and hospitals to think that, hey, your employer is going to pay for your health insurance, so don't worry about it. Your employer will pay for your drugs, so don't worry about the cost. And over time that changed because it got so expensive for the employer who provided you what we call commercial benefits. That's employer-based health insurance. That all of a sudden more costs started to get passed on to you. Now, if you're a Gen Xer, okay, or a boomer, think back to 15 years ago. They didn't take any money out of your paycheck for health insurance, okay? None back in, well, maybe probably 20 years ago, but and there's very few people left who could still say that. Very, very few. In fact, most people I know, if they have family benefits in the United States, are at a minimum taking $550 per paycheck just for the right to have health insurance. Guys, that's $1,100 a month at a minimum. The average is more like $1,450 in the United States right now in 2020. So when you do the math, and also remember, that's a high deductible plan, $5,000 per year that you have to pay for your family before you can get them to kick in. So when you do the math of, 1,400 times 12 months and then 5,000, you're talking about $23,000 per family per year for the right to have health insurance before they get a single drug, before they get access to a single doctor. They've had to pay $23,000. I mean, you can buy a car, a good car with that every year. It's just gotten out of control. So we have to get Americans out of this mindset that, oh, my employer pays for it, because even though they're paying that money, they think it's more expensive to go outside and do it on their own. And that's just not the case at all anymore.
I'm personally myself, I'm from Canada, born and raised in Canada. As you know, there's some similarities but differences as well with the Canadian and American healthcare system. Do you see any sort of excuse me, things that other countries are doing or other healthcare systems are doing that the U.S. should implement to improve sort of what's,
Yeah, short answer for that is price transparency. And as much as President Trump has been like a capitalistic, president, of course, he's a business person. He has come down hard on healthcare to share the prices, and we need that. It's because he has to. There's no choice anymore. It has to happen. Their lobbies are so strong that this is why he's chosen to use it in an executive order. And if you don't know what an executive order is, President Obama used them at record pace. President Trump's continued at record pace. And that means he makes a rule and everybody has to work backwards to fight it instead of trying to get congressional support for it. Because here's why Congress will never support pricing transparency. Because 3 of the 4 biggest lobbies are health insurers, hospitals, okay, and drugs, pharma. Okay, none of them want price transparency because that gives us the ability to go back to your last question, which is to become EHCs, engaged healthcare consumers. You shop for cars when you're shopping for a car. You shop for homes when you're shopping for a home. You shop neighborhoods. You shop school districts. How many bedrooms? Does it have the white picket fence or not? Why not for your body? Why not for healthcare? So my big push is to get Americans to become EHCs, engaged healthcare consumers. Once you've done that and you've made that decision that, hey, I'm paying too much for the right to have healthcare, I say, hey, there's a 3P plan that you need to put together. That 3P plan is to have a plan based on personalized medicine and preventative medicine, which the millennials have kind of done naturally as they've kind of grown up, and now they're the largest generation in the workforce. So it's going to be a natural evolution to a proactive healthcare delivery model that includes healthy living versus what I grew up with as a Gen Xer in the 80s and even in the 90s as a reactive healthcare delivery model that's gotten more and more expensive.
You just mentioned obviously proactive and reactive, and that's another question I want to talk to you about is how we can, not just with the system itself, but with us personally, how we can, instead of just living our life, eating what we want and sitting on the couch and in front of screens and doing what we want haphazardly, which doesn't, you don't really notice the effects in the short term. You'll really notice the effects on your health down the road, excess drinking, excess smoking. How can we be more proactive in our health personally with better eating, drinking more water, better sleep, regular exercise 30 minutes a day? What are your thoughts on that? So then that way we don't really even have to get into the healthcare system, down the road because we've become proactive in that nature.
Yeah, so we created a not-for-profit website that anybody can go to. It's called spendlessonhealthcare.org, spendlessonhealthcare.org. And on that website, we have all of these tips from my books and more now. We have bonus tips as well. You can get emailed to you or texted to you the 10 free tips to spend less on healthcare. In fact, if you're not driving and you have your phone on you, I can have that in your hands in about 30 seconds. I just need you to text the word Josh, Josh, to 72,000. Josh to 72,000, and it'll ask you, hey, you want the 10 free tips? And you say yes, and we send them to you. And those are housed at spendlessonhealthcare.org. Once you've made the commitment that, man, I can't, that 23 grand, I didn't realize it. Guys, I'm challenging right now. If you have family benefits and you live in the US, I can almost guarantee you it's 20 grand a year, no matter how creative you are. People always go, well, I take my benefits and my husband and the kids take his. No. I can guarantee you're overpaying. Okay. Every American is. There's better ways to do it. These tips are simple. They're turnkey. I'll give you a couple of examples. There's discount pharmaceutical websites. Almost every family has one member, if not multiple, that are on chronic disease medications that are literally constant every month. There's several tools that you can use to reduce your healthcare spend. There's alternatives to health insurance. I'm a member of what's called a cost-sharing community. Have been for a year or two. So is my brother, former Major League Baseball player, who has chosen to be part of a cost-sharing community where my cost per month for health benefits and a direct access to a direct primary care doctor, which we call DPC, direct primary care. It's one of the tips where I can walk in anytime, any member of my family, okay, and no appointment needed, and there's no additional cost when we go. It's $150 a month. Okay, there's a new one out there that I love. It's at advohealth.com or .org, ADVO Health, for $25 a month. You or anybody else, doesn't matter if you're in the States, $25 a month, you get 24/7 access to a telehealth doctor, even a specialist for psych. You can't beat that. If you're out of work, and 40 million Americans were recently on unemployment, and you're worried about healthcare, $25 a month is a better alternative than the $1,400 that your COBRA extension. COBRA is the American term for, hey, you just lost your job, but you're guaranteed by law to have access to health insurance for 6 months. It's called COBRA. $1,400 for your family. How about $25 to sign up for Advo Health, which gives you 24/7 access to a doctor for your whole family and a discount pharmaceutical program? Those are the type of tips we share with you at spendlessonhealthcare.org.
That's a great thing that you're doing in your nonprofit. I think, as you just mentioned, so many people are losing their jobs, and obviously we know we're in absolute unprecedented times right now with this coronavirus pandemic. Almost 3 million reported cases in the U.S., hitting 57,000 in one day, a couple of days ago, and it doesn't look like there's a slowdown in the near future as well. Talk about your thoughts on, is the healthcare system in the U.S. ready for the next wave or this surge that's happening in coronavirus cases? Where do you see this playing out, and how can we go from here?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions in one there. So first of all, I've been on some local TV and done some national interviews too about hospital preparedness and nursing home preparedness. The real battleground is in the nursing homes and with the vulnerable. I think some other countries have done a better job of saying, hey, let's focus on the vulnerable instead of focusing on mass population, because we saw what's happened now. Even if we all quarantine for 3 months, as soon as we go out, you're having what a lot of people are calling the second wave, but Dr. Fauci is just calling, the implementation of the first wave. Here's what concerns me is the media continues to focus on number of new cases instead of the fact that the mortality rate is well under 1% now, even once you get COVID-19. And so, and even those who are dying, it's almost entirely seniors or those who are immunocompromised. And the media has not transitioned to that focus yet, because the media controls the media and we keep turning it on. And so it's not to say this is a farce and we shouldn't be doing any of this, but it does give you pause to think, wow, this was economic and financial warfare, shutting down an entire economy for 2 or 3 months and still stifling it, even after those 2 or 3 months, for a less than 1% mortality rate that is almost entirely focused, impacting just those that are compromised. So where is the focus and the effort there? In fact, I've had a lot of compassion for nursing homes over the last few months, which of course I'm a licensed administrator, because instead of the government stepping in and hospitals stepping in and helping these completely under-resourced senior homes, convalescent homes, they've been getting fines for not doing well enough. And it just, the end result is going to be nursing homes in America being given a lot longer look and a lot more resources. Once this pandemic is kind of winded down, I don't think that will become the focus till the end of 2020 or maybe 2021, where so many people are going to go, how in the world were our nursing homes so underprepared for this contagious virus? And I'm going to answer that for you. We shouldn't call them nursing homes. There's only 2 nurses in the whole place by law. Okay, that's the minimum. That's all they staff. They can't afford more. The rest of them are what we call certified nurse assistants. I'm a licensed CNA. I had to do that when I was training in my nursing homes. But you don't even have to have a high school degree to test to be a CNA. And I don't mean to put people down. I just mean to say it's a completely different level of care. You just got to pass a test and get licensed. So those nursing homes are some of the most under-resourced business models you'll ever see.
It is unfortunate to see what is happening, and it did nursing homes, as you mentioned, did get hit hard, and I hope for everybody that this pandemic does go away as soon as possible, and we can get back to whatever normal life will look like after this. I know you have your own podcast as well. You did a recent interview with Pastor Jay Hewitt, and I really enjoyed watching. It was a very touching story. He talked about his diagnosis with brain cancer and how he wanted to teach his daughter how to be more resilient, and sort of the aha moment that he had to really live the best life possible each and every day, because life is so precious, as we can clearly see. Can you talk about what motivates you to do the best that you can do each day? What kind of is that fire in your belly every morning?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And thanks for mentioning that interview. My YouTube show is so my YouTube channel is Dr. Josh Luke on YouTube, but you can find my YouTube show, Spend Less, Live Well. And it's also on all major podcast networks if you just want to listen to the audio. And I, on my YouTube show, I try to keep it to 15-minute episodes so people know what they're getting into. That's something new I've been trying the last year or so. So we did a 3-parter with Jay Hewitt, a pastor who was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer, and he's fought it off as well as he can. And now he's doing some triathlons, and awesome interviews that you mentioned. And his story was so touching about, hey, if he's only got months or years, and I think at the time he thought maybe even weeks, what type of legacy does he want to leave for his beautiful wife and daughter? And I work with his wife. I teach at Hope International University. He and his wife both graduated from Hope International. And so they've been a real inspiration to me. And much like Jay, who's turned to his faith and family, I look at faith and family that, I'm a Christian, and I'm so thankful for the sacrifices made for me. But I also am somebody who saw my grandmother struggle through a broken system before she passed away. And then my mom, bless her heart, before she passed away, battling with Alzheimer's in a system that really got worse and not better, even in the time that I was working in it. And so, my wife and I founded the not-for-profit entity that we run to really raise money for Alzheimer's disease. And, with my mom and my grandmother both passed now, I still do it to honor them, but I also do it for my wife and kids to set an example of what can be done with the gifts that God blessed me with. I recognize that I have as many faults as I do gifts, but I also have come to stay in tune with when the market, whether it's the social media market or people buying products and services from our website, tell me what my value is, what the value and expertise I bring is, whether it's I'm a public speaker. When there's not a pandemic, I'm a public speaker, I should say. So I know when I'm on stage, I'm at my best because I can share these stories and this knowledge with people and really simplify it is what I do. When you go to see those 10 free tips on healthcare at spendlessonhealthcare.org, you're going to see that they're not like, oh, you have to move a mountain and do this. They're like, hey, talk to your doctor, ask your doctor. And you're like, what? What do you mean ask your doctor? You'd be amazed how many people are told you have this test and it's $4,000 and you need to do this. And you go, are there any other options? And the doctor goes, yeah, I might not even do it right now because it's very minor, but you asked what, needed to be done. And I told you about this $4,000 test. You'd be amazed how many times people have told me, man, we were like for 2 or 3 weeks stressed out about this test. And then the doctor said, no, I wouldn't even do it if I were you. That was just one of the options, but the way they presented it initially, you didn't hear that. So, talk to your doctor, ask for a discount, shop. I mean, these are all the simple things that you'll learn when you go to spend less on healthcare and learn about the 10 free tips. So they all kind of come back to that.
Yeah, for sure. And you highlight definitely a great point, which is the power of gratitude, of course. Even in the face of adversity, we really always have to look inside and look around us. And we're definitely going to see things that we're grateful for and realize that we're not living an eternal life. It is a very finite life, and we do have to be, and that's one of the reasons I was mentioning to you earlier, I wrote my book, Time Thieves, because time is so precious, and we definitely have to do the best that we can each and every day. How can people learn more about you, your websites? I know you mentioned your YouTube channel, that interview with Pastor Jay Hewitt as well. Everybody should definitely go check that out. Very, very inspirational. How can people reach out to you and learn more about you if they want to get in touch?
Thanks for asking. So my speaking website, hey guys, I'm a public speaker. That's how I feed my family. This year it's been really slow, but if you're planning an event for the fall of 2020 or in 2021, I would love to come speak to your group. I have 3 or 4 topics. I can promise you they won't be disappointed. I also include a breakout session and a free copy of my book for every attendee. So it's a pretty cool deal. That's at drjoshluke.com. So drjoshluke.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn and YouTube at Dr. Josh Luke. That's really where most people have come to follow me. On Twitter, it's at Josh Luke for Health. You can find the books on Amazon. You can learn all you need to about me at drjoshluke.com. And I really appreciate the platform, the opportunity to share these things. And folks, if I could just challenge you, if you're overspending on healthcare, which 98% of Americans are, take a look at that website. It's there for you. It's got free tips. You can start implementing some of them today. Save a bunch of money and cut your family budget back so you have some extra spending money for the fun stuff in life.
Dr. Josh Luke, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you today. Thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge. And of course, I do wish you all the best in your life going forward.
Anytime. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much once again to my wonderful guest, Dr. Josh Luke, for sharing his story, knowledge, and expertise with us today. Make sure to go to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcasting app to subscribe to the show, as I have a ton of incredible guests still to come in upcoming episodes, and leave a review so others can also get the benefit that you got out of today's episode. I want you all to live the best life possible on your own terms, and I thank you so much for continuing to spend your time with me and joining me on this journey to better our lives through personal development and growth training. My name is Maher Abiad. I'll catch you in the next episode.
You've been listening to another quality episode of the Nolimitspreneur Podcast with your host, Maher Abiad. Want to continue to master your mindset? Download the 7 self-limiting beliefs that are stealing your success away guide for free right now at nolimitsmindset.com.